Our first story takes us to the seemingly peaceful community of Oakhaven, a cul-de-sac where children played freely and neighbors exchanged warm greetings. It was a place where the laughter of children echoed through the streets, and the scent of barbecues filled the air on warm summer evenings. The residents took pride in their well-kept lawns and the sense of camaraderie that bound them together. The house at the end of the street, a stately Victorian with a wraparound porch and a tire swing swaying gently in the breeze, had always been a fixture, its presence as familiar as the scent of freshly cut grass on a summer afternoon. Its grand architecture and timeless charm made it a beloved landmark, a symbol of the neighborhood's history and stability. But behind the charming facade, a creeping sense of unease began to permeate the air, casting a pall over the once idyllic neighborhood. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a whisper carried on the wind, a disharmony in the everyday symphony of suburban life. The once cheerful greetings became strained, and the laughter of children seemed to fade into nervous giggles. Strange noises emanated from the old Victorian, sounds that defied easy explanation. At first it was just a faint scratching in the dead of night, like claws scraping against the inside of the walls. The sounds grew more frequent, more insistent, as if something, or someone, was trying to break free from within the house's very structure. Then came the soft, muffled whispers, barely audible at first, but growing steadily louder, as if the house itself were trying to speak. Sleep became a distant memory for those living closest to the Victorian, their nights haunted by the unsettling symphony of unseen forces. The whispers seemed to carry messages, fragmented and unintelligible, yet filled with a sense of urgency and despair. Fear, like a creeping vine, began to take root in the hearts of the residents, its tendrils slowly but surely choking out their sense of peace and security. The once vibrant community gatherings dwindled, replaced by hushed conversations and furtive glances towards the ominous house at the end of the street. The whispers started shortly after the arrival of the new neighbor, a reclusive older woman named Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Mrs. Hayes kept to herself, rarely venturing out during the day, and her windows, always dark and shuttered, seemed to watch the neighborhood with an unsettling intensity. Her presence added to the growing sense of mystery and fear that gripped Oakhaven. Some residents, desperate for an explanation, whispered about Mrs. Hayes being a spiritualist, someone who could communicate with the dead. Others, their imaginations running wild, spun tales of a dark past, of a family curse that had followed Mrs. Hayes to Oakhaven. The stories grew more elaborate with each retelling, feeding the collective anxiety of the community. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and dread, a group of neighbors decided to investigate, their unease growing with each passing day. They held late-night vigils, their eyes glued to the darkened windows of the Victorian, their ears straining to make sense of the whispers that seemed to seep from the very walls. They hoped to uncover the truth, to find some rational explanation for the eerie phenomena that had disrupted their lives. Was it merely the creaking of an old house, the product of their overactive imaginations? Or was there something more sinister at play, something that whispered of secrets best left buried, of a darkness that threatened to consume their once peaceful community? The answers remained elusive, hidden in the shadows of the whispering walls, leaving the residents of Oakhaven to wonder if their lives would ever return to normal. Our next story takes a chilling turn, leading us to the shores of Crystal Lake, where a weekend getaway spiraled into a terrifying encounter with the unknown. This serene location, often a haven for those seeking peace, became the backdrop for a series of inexplicable events that would haunt the memories of those involved. A group of friends, eager to escape the city's oppressive heat, rented a secluded lake house, its wooden frame perched precariously on the edge of the water, a silent sentinel against the encroaching woods. The house, with its rustic charm and promise of tranquility, seemed like the perfect retreat. The first few days passed in a haze of laughter, barbecues, and late-night swims, the friends oblivious to the unseen eyes watching their every move. They reveled in the freedom and the beauty of their surroundings, unaware of the dark presence lurking just beyond their perception. But as the sun began its final descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the lake's glassy surface, a sense of unease settled upon the group, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The once inviting waters now seemed to hold secrets, and the whispering wind carried an ominous tone. It began with a series of strange occurrences, easily dismissed at first as pranks or figments of their imagination. Lights flickered without reason, and the air grew colder, even as the summer heat persisted outside. Objects moved mysteriously in the night. Doors creaked open, seemingly on their own. The friends tried to laugh it off, attributing the oddities to the house's age and their own overactive imaginations, and a pervasive feeling of being watched permeated the air, sending shivers down their spines. It was as if the very walls of the house had eyes, observing their every move with a silent, malevolent intent. Then, one cool evening, as the friends gathered around a crackling fire, sharing ghost stories and laughter, one of their own vanished without a trace. The laughter died in their throats, replaced by a chilling silence as they realized the gravity of the situation. The group searched frantically, their calls echoing through the silent woods, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The dense forest seemed to swallow their voices, offering no clues, no answers. Days turned into an agonizing blur of searching, their initial hope giving way to a gnawing sense of dread. The once vibrant group was now a shadow of its former self, consumed by worry and fear. The police, their faces etched with skepticism, found no signs of forced entry, no indication of foul play. Their lack of answers only deepened the mystery, leaving the friends in a state of helplessness. The friends, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion, clung to the hope that their friend was still out there, lost but alive. They refused to give up, even as the days stretched into an endless nightmare. But as the days stretched into weeks, their hope dwindled, replaced by a chilling certainty that something sinister had transpired in the secluded woods surrounding Crystal Lake. The once beautiful landscape now seemed to hide dark secrets and malevolent forces. Just when all hope seemed lost, a glimmer of something inexplicable emerged, a flicker of the impossible that left the group both terrified and bewildered. It was as if the veil between worlds had been lifted, revealing glimpses of the unknown. One by one, they began to see glimpses of their missing friend, fleeting apparitions that appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. These sightings, though brief, were unmistakable, leaving the friends questioning their own sanity. Was it their friend, trapped between worlds, reaching out from beyond the veil of death? Or were these ghostly sightings merely manifestations of their guilt and grief, cruel tricks played by their own minds, desperate for closure? The mystery of Crystal Lake remains unsolved, a haunting reminder of the thin line between reality and the supernatural. Picture this. A young couple, Sarah and Tom, finally move into their dream home. A quaint little bungalow with a white picket fence, nestled in a peaceful cul-de-sac. It was the kind of place they had always envisioned, a perfect setting to start their new life together. They were so excited to finally have a place to call their own. The joy of unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and decorating their new space filled their days with happiness. Little did they know their slice of suburban paradise was about to become a living nightmare. The tranquility they sought would soon be shattered by an unimaginable horror. It all started innocently enough. They were simply trying to make their house a home. They decided to plant a lemon tree in the backyard, a symbol of their fresh start. The act of planting something new felt like a promise of growth and prosperity. As Tom sunk the shovel into the earth, it hit something hard, something unnatural. The sound was jarring, a stark contrast to the soft soil. He brushed away the dirt, revealing a weathered wooden box. The box looked old, its wood darkened and worn by time. Curiosity got the best of them. They couldn't resist the urge to uncover what lay hidden beneath their new home. They pried it open, their hearts pounding with a mixture of excitement and unease. What could be inside this mysterious box? Inside, nestled amongst yellowed cloth, lay a small, intricately carved wooden doll. The craftsmanship was exquisite, yet there was something unsettling about it. It was eerily lifelike, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to follow their every move. The doll's gaze was almost hypnotic, drawing them in. Unnerved but unable to resist its pull, Sarah carefully picked up the doll. It felt heavier than it looked, as if it carried a weight beyond its physical form. A chill ran down her spine, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. It was as if the doll was whispering secrets only she could hear. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just her imagination. But the feeling lingered, a shadow that refused to be dispelled. That night, Sarah woke up to the sound of whispering. The whispers were faint, almost like a distant echo, but they were unmistakable. Soft, unintelligible murmurs seemed to be coming from downstairs. The sound was both alluring and terrifying. She nudged Tom awake, her heart pounding in her chest. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. They listened intently, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate with them. Fear propelled them out of bed. They had to find the source of the whispers, had to understand what was happening. They crept down the stairs, their eyes scanning the darkness. Every creak of the floorboard seemed amplified in the silence of the night. As they reached the living room, the whispering abruptly stopped. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the earlier noise. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock, each tick echoing the frantic beat of their hearts. The tension in the room was palpable. On the coffee table, bathed in the pale moonlight, lay the doll. Its presence was both ominous and inexplicable. Its blue eyes seemed to gleam with an unnatural light, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that it had moved, that it was now closer than before. The doll seemed to be watching them, waiting. The next morning, they tried to rationalize the events of the previous night. They told themselves it was just a bad dream, a trick of the mind. They convinced themselves it was just the stress of the move, the house settling. But the unease lingered, a constant presence in the back of their minds. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a seed that would soon grow into something much darker, a seed that would soon grow into full-blown terror. The whispers continued, growing more frequent and intense. Days turned into sleepless nights. The lack of rest took its toll on them, both physically and mentally. The whispering continued, growing more frequent and intense. It was as if the house itself was alive, its voice a constant presence. It was as if the house itself was speaking, its voice a chorus of tormented souls. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then came the nightmares, vivid and horrifying. Each one centered around the doll and the whispers. The dreams felt so real, as if they were living another life within them. One night, Sarah woke up with a gasp, her sheets soaked in sweat. The nightmare had been so vivid, so terrifying. She turned to Tom, but he wasn't there. Panic set in as she realized he was missing. She called out his name, her voice trembling with fear, but there was no answer. The silence was suffocating. She got out of bed and made her way to the bedroom door, her hand shaking as she reached for the handle. Every step felt like an eternity. As she opened the door, she was met with a sight that made her blood run cold. There, standing in the hallway, was a shadowy figure. There, standing in the hallway, was a shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with the same eerie light as the doll's. Terror lent Sarah speed. She slammed the door shut and fumbled for the light switch. She slammed the door shut and fumbled for the light switch. The hallway was empty. The figure had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. She blinked, her mind struggling to reconcile what she had seen. Was it real, or was it just another trick of the mind? Was it real, or was she losing her mind? The line between reality and nightmare was becoming increasingly blurred. She found Tom downstairs, sitting in the living room, his face pale and drawn. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. He had the same haunted look in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. They were both trapped in this nightmare, unable to escape. They knew they had to do something, had to find a way to break free from the grip of the entity that had invaded their home. They couldn't go on living like this. They called a priest, a paranormal investigator, anyone who would listen. They were desperate for help, for someone to believe them. They described the whispers, the nightmares, the shadowy figure. They poured out their hearts hoping for a solution, but no one believed them. Their pleas were met with skepticism and disbelief. They were just a young couple, stressed out from a move, their imaginations running wild. Desperation set in. They felt isolated, alone in their terror. They were trapped, living in a waking nightmare, haunted by the secrets buried in their backyard. Secrets that were slowly driving them to the brink of madness. The once promising future now seemed bleak and filled with dread. And so, the tale of Sarah and Tom serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones that lurk closest to home, the ones hidden beneath the surface of normalcy, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Remember, the next time you greet your neighbor, you might just be living next to the next spine-chilling tale. Good night and stay safe.